Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
I see you have a tea bag that you're pulling out of a teacup or mug.
Correct. Because where is the Tea Party?
Where is the Tea Party, Mickey?
There should be a Tea Party brewing in the country. I mean, we have all sorts of things going wrong. Crime is rampant. The border is open. It's like D-Day. People arriving on a flotilla of rafts. We have woke scandals everywhere. We have the critical race theory taking over the schools. A huge fight about that. We have a neo-welfare system happening. And we may have inflation. So normally that's the brew that much less than that started the Tea Party under the Obama administration. This is much more than that. So where is the rebellion? The Republicans seem to be drinking the sort of tea that I'm drinking, which is soothing turmeric tea. They're completely AWOL. And I'm looking for some sort of grassroots leader to emerge to give some form and substance to this. And I don't know who that person is.
You know, there's some evidence.
Huge opportunity there.
There's some evidence. This isn't directly related to your question, but that turmeric is it forestalls dementia. Have you read that? Do you remember reading it?
No, I know it does all sorts of good things, and I've taken so much turmeric that I've forgotten what turmeric does for you.
Well, I guess we have our answer. Okay, so wait, there should be like a big rebellion, and before we get to why there isn't one. I mean, do you blame Trump for there not being a rebellion? Is he hogging all the energy, or is he obscuring the landscape, or I don't know.
That's an interesting theory, which I hadn't thought of. So that could be one theory. My theory, the Republicans are fat and happy. They're measuring the drapes. They think it's inevitable that they retake the House, and they don't really have to do much. Now, hopefully, this race in New Mexico, which they just lost, despite making a big deal out of crime, should be a little bit of a wake-up call. It was a heavily Democratic district, so they weren't really expected to do well, but they did very badly. But, they're like Kevin McCarthy is just not the charismatic leader of a rebellion. Plus, on some of these issues, like immigration specifically, they really aren't in tune with the base. They are Chamber of Commerce types who really, who want to get control of the border so they can have a giant amnesty and double the number of immigrants.
Even if they were more of your mind, immigration-wise, wouldn't they be happy to let Biden stew in his own juice for another few months?
Well, that seems to be the philosophy. But Joel Kotkin wrote a very good column that says exactly what I just said, which is there's a backlash brewing. So
okay.
Higher authorities.
I think we may have gotten all the mileage we can get out of the tea metaphor, but fine, it's brewing.
I'm sorry. I wasn't making a tea metaphor.
No, it's good. It's good. This is what people come here for. Is the mind blowing, the mind blowing and original metaphors.
I'll be a babbling baby by the time this is through.
So what would you like to see happening? I mean, you mean people in Congress should be giving wilder speeches, or people should be marching in the streets?
Well, a classic example is the two issues that bug me: the immigration, Biden's, the immigration thing. They do speak up a lot about, but they're not they're not yelling it from the rooftops. On the welfare part of here's the lay of the land is. Biden has these two huge bills, the infrastructure bill, which is hard infrastructure, and the Families Act, which is a bunch of soft expansions of the welfare state, including this thing that sends checks to no questions asked to every parent, $3,000, $2,500.
Sounds like a political winner to me.
And that you can attack that as welfare, and the Republicans aren't doing that. Marco Rubio and Mike Lee are in theory the leaders of the opposition. But they're not making a big deal of it. So where is the leadership?
How much
This is the classic thing that has worked for Republicans in the past. Why not do it?
How much political mileage is there to be had by attacking the sending of checks to people? People like checks.
Well, people like welfare checks too. You can say that this is
but this time it's not. But these checks don't just go to super low income people. That's the political difference here.
That is a political difference. But people who are working and people who are working for a living getting a check, or people who are working for a living period, tend to resent checks sent to people who aren't working. That used to be the case. Maybe the political landscape has changed. I guess the larger issue, we always have to look for the larger issue.
We're all about the larger issue, Mickey. What is the larger issue?
As I'm thinking of it, there's a smaller issue, which is the Tea Party sort of threw a net over a wide variety of concerns. So that was sort of something that people could talk about instead of talking about the deficit or the constitutional restrictions on the federal government. They talked about the Tea Party, okay? There's no net been thrown over this yet. The larger issue is Republicans...
Wait, what does that mean? There's no net been... There's no...
No label, no single symbol that covers a variety of substantive positions. Why
don't you come up with one and lead the movement?
It's an old expression of Senator Hollings. He was always saying, "We got to throw a net over this," and by that he meant the single defining thing that makes you think.
You worked for Senator Hollings,
right? So if I don't know if I were going to throw a net over Bob Wright. I don't think I could do that. But the classic throwing a net over Jimmy Carter was the tennis courts. Okay, he's sitting there micromanaging the tennis courts while the country's falling apart. That was the net over Jimmy Carter.
Okay, but are you looking for the name? Are you looking for the name of
James Fallows?
Are you looking for a new name for a Tea Party movement? Tea Party already has a name.
But the Tea Party movement is obsolete. That was all focused on the deficit and restoring the Constitution, and it was not applicable to the substance of it. It's not really applicable to the current situation. I don't think. Anti-wokeness would be stop the woke madness, something like that.
Okay, but that's my question. Are you looking for a name of a party, or are you looking for a single issue that crystallizes this?
I was thinking of the name of a party.
Anti-wokeness is an issue.
I was thinking of the name of a party, and I was also thinking that the larger issue is that the Republicans don't really have much to say.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes right down to it, they're still talking about tax cuts. Paul Ryan gave a speech. We have to focus on the tremendous achievement of the Trump tax cuts, and that's just not going to fly. That position is in the dustbin of history, I think. So the Republicans are stymied. I think if the child tax credit's a classic example. Why all this fuss about the child tax credit and the decline of fertility and the need for natalism? It's sort of because it gives Republicans something to say. If the Republicans really thought about the major issues of the day, they would be half Democrats. They would be for some sort of national health insurance or some sort. They would be addressing the issue of health insurance. They wouldn't be trying to come up with little gimmicks that show, hey, we have something to say that the working class might like. So I guess the larger issue is that the Republicans don't really, or just totally amorphous and meaningless at this point.
They don't stand for the things Mickey stands for.
Well, you could say that they're split, okay? Half of them are for amnesty, half of them are for strict immigration control, okay? Yes,
well,
Mickey's on one side
an elite.
of that.
That's probably kind of an elite grassroots split.
Yes, the immigration is an elite grassroots split. On welfare, half of them have been taken in by this new, hip, young breed of conservative associated with the Niskanen Center that just says, "Hey, we can give the dole to people, and it will solve natalism, and that whole Clinton era stuff about welfare reform is passé because we're going to give a lower marginal tax rate out of poverty." Well, okay, and they've gotten to They've even penetrated the office of Rubio, who is allegedly the main opposition.
It just seems to me the rhythm isn't right for some big thing now. I mean, we're just getting over Trump, And it's like I was thinking today, Biden is becoming, to me, the Biden presidency is becoming more like background noise. And that's the way I like my presidents. This is nice. You know, I can go through a whole day without thinking about him. I like that. And the pandemic is, you know, in most parts of America seems to be ending more or less. In fact, the 7-day death average is down to 430, lowest it's been since March of 2020. So it's like, it just seems like a weird, you know, between like recovering from the Trump stuff and Biden really not having generated a lot of stuff yet that naturally outrages people. I mean, I know you'd say, well, give immigration time. Okay, maybe in a few months it'll be a clear and present, you know, danger or something. Who knows? But like right now, it just doesn't feel right that you would have some big groundswell of energy, a whole new rebellion. It's just too soon.
There may be something to that. You know, during the Tea Party, we were in the middle of a recession, digging our way out of a recession. So
right. I mean, we seem to be pulling out of this one fairly smartly.
Right.
If anything, there are more jobs. You know, I mean, you know, apparently a fair number of people are happy to sit around and collect their checks. I'm sure you'll use this as a talking point someday in talking about another issue. But what's not to like? I mean,
what's not to like are the things.
That you don't like as a policy nerd. I understand that. Most Americans aren't policy nerds.
Well, I mean, the polls certainly show. For one thing, the polls certainly show that the immigration issue is killing Biden. Everything else he's popular on. The immigration issue is his main vulnerability. And there's actually, you know, I keep waiting for Biden to do the big about face, fire Mayorkas, restore some sanity to the border, at least give the impression of restoring sanity. And he's faced with this contradiction, which is there are all these people out of work, wages are rising, he's in favor of a tight labor market. He correctly thinks that's a good thing. He gave a speech about it the other day. Yet he's bringing in all these immigrants to undermine wages, okay? So which is it? Is he for higher wages or lower wages? And there's a split in his administration, apparently, between Raimondo, who, according to Breitbart, and I tend to trust this account, she stiff-armed the Chamber of Commerce, which said, let's double or quadruple the levels of immigration, and said, no, we should train existing Americans for the jobs that are unfilled now. And Mayorkas, who's, you know, opening the floodgates and bringing in as many people as he can as quickly as he can. So there are signs of an internal split that might bear some fruit on that. So I don't think it's like it's definitely a salient issue. It's not like nobody's thinking about it.
No.
The crime is probably more salient, and wokeness in education has the ability to mobilize the suburbs in a way that the other issues maybe don't.
That reminds me, there was a piece in the New York Times about movements of parents around the country that are against, you know, introducing systemic ideas about systemic racism into the curriculum. And they led with this. In Loudoun County, Virginia, a group of parents led by a former Trump appointee are pushing to recall school board members after the school board called for mandatory teacher training in, quote, systemic oppression and implicit bias. I just thought it was interesting that they kind of led with a tribal marker, in other words, associated this with Trump. And I'm kind of wondering to what extent it is. I mean, I don't know what the lay of political opinion is on this issue. Have you seen like good polling on like how many parents are not wild about this kind of thing?
No, but there have been a few rebellions around the country.
They lead with.
You're saying that story linked the rebellion to Trump?
Well, I just thought it was a classic lead where they say in Loudoun County, Virginia, in Washington, and so they give 3 examples of this phenomenon in successive paragraphs at the beginning. But the one they put first was the one where they could say a former Trump appointee is put. I just thought it was interesting. They're kind of choosing to frame it that way. It seems to me.
Well, they can't give up Trump. Interesting. What you said triggers the thought, which is, you know, people have been politically active for 4 years. Either side, politics has taken up an incredible number of their waking hours. Okay, now they have a respite for it. We're talking about should Kimmy Schmidt have been part of
that was a bad rap,
ball?
Man. That was a bad rap.
Okay, but it's an example of what a slow news day it is. That it was a rap at all. So at some point, people having compressed the rest of their day down to like 4 hours of work, they're going to realize, hey, I have all this time. I might as well be an activist again at my local school board. Or so they're going to discover there's sort of a void of activism. They have the capacity to be a lot more active politically than they have been in the early Biden months, and maybe that's when the new Tea Party would happen. Just a thought.
It seems to be another notable thing about this week is that it was kind of a very bad week for Trump. Well, it depends on how you interpret it, I guess. But so, you've got these stories that he expects to reoccupy the White House any moment now. I think he's already got his suitcase packed. Secondly, his blog launched only a month ago amid much fanfare. He's pulled the plug on. And then
nobody
Facebook
was reading it. So.
Yeah, well, but let's talk about what that means. But the third thing is, Facebook says they will suspend him through at least January 2023. Now, that may be good news for him because I'm guessing they'll end the suspension then, and that's right at the beginning of the presidential campaign. It does keep him out of off of Facebook through the midterms. I don't know if that's good or bad for the Democrats, honestly, but
it's one of those things where if I were a hack, which I am, I would write a column saying, does Trump's presence in the primaries help the Democrats or the Republicans? And it's a zero-sum game. It can't help both of them, really. Since what matters is who controls Congress. It's a yes or no thing. Who controls the House? There are some Democrats who say, "I wish we'd stop talking about Trump. It hurt us last time. We didn't do very well in the House. We should talk about these winning issues." And there's certainly a lot of Republicans who wish Trump would go away, which he's not going to do. And their dilemma is, they need Trump's voters to come out. But if Trump comes in, which he will, and mobilizes his voter, he'll probably fuck it up like he did in Georgia and make it all about himself and bring in the election fraud claims and undermine people's faith in the election. So why are you asking them to vote if you don't have faith in the election? So that's their dilemma. I tend to think Republicans would be better if Trump did not intervene in any particular way. But that's not. That's not going to happen. No,
but the Facebook thing is non-trivial. I mean, I think more of his energy came from Twitter than Facebook, but it's at least in terms of the energy he directly imparts. Yeah.
I mean, I guess all he has to do is send the signal to the base. I don't think anybody else. I don't think he
you
really.
Mean that he's running?
No, they should either come out to vote or not come out to vote. And in Georgia, he sent both signals, and not enough of them came out to vote, or they lost in some close races. And does the base get its news through? How does the base get its news? I guess it's through Facebook. I guess Facebook.
Well, I think there's still a lot of cable TV. I mean, the more extreme part of it is OAN and Newsmax, and there's still a lot of Fox News. God, there was some stat about Tucker Carlson's influence, the percentage of, I think it was Republicans polled who cited him as the most important influence. Somebody was polled, most important influence.
That would be, I think that was the Punch Bowl
Yes,
canvas.
It was. And it was a high number, way above anybody else, including Sean Hannity, much to Hannity's chagrin, I'm sure.
I think they're right. The really disturbing, and this goes to your point about how quiet the Biden years are, the really disturbing number in that canvas was that almost half, 46 or 47%, think that Biden is going to pass his whole big agenda, both bills, the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure, in a big reconciliation package with only Democratic votes. And of course, that's what I'm scared of. And even if Manchin blocks ending the filibuster, he could vote for that.
But Biden's already down to $1 billion. He started out at $2.3 billion on the jobs bill. So, I mean, he's already well into Republican territory here.
Well, that's in the hard infrastructure bill. We don't. That's a sideshow. That's what the media focuses on. The key ideological thing is the soft bill, the Families Act, which has all the money for daycare and for turning, millions of people into home health care workers, and it has this welfare plan that I don't like, and it's as big as the other one. So it's I guess the home health care thing is in the hard bill. Sorry, the soft bill is where he becomes the new FDR and radically expands the federal government to what end, I don't know. And that's the ball game. And so there was a ruling. One big thing that happened this week is the parliamentarian fleshed out her ruling on how many times they can use reconciliation. Mm-hmm. And it's really complicated. But as the last explanation I read is they can do reconciliation, but they would have to start a new budget resolution every time they wanted to do another reconciliation bill. So remember when I said that there were going to be 4? Mm-hmm. That's probably not going to happen because the flaw in the plan for the Democrats is they can't get this budget resolution out of committee. The committee is split like 12-12 because there's only a 50-50 split. And there's a rule that if it's a tie, somehow it doesn't get to the floor. So that's the bottleneck. So that means Schumer's only going to have one reconciliation bill. And I don't know what the implications of that are. I mean, if you put everything in this one reconciliation bill, as this canvas poll suggests, the hard and the soft infrastructure bill, does that help or hurt his chance of passage? On the one hand, there's something for everybody in the bill. On the other hand, there's something everybody hates in the bill. Mm-hmm. And you would think you'd want to break it up into little packages so you could pass each bill with a different coalition. But in this case, he's not going to get any Republican votes. He's not going to build any coalition. He has to have everybody. So does the fact that he has to put it all in one big bill mean that Biden really does want to deal now more with Republicans? So that takes it out. So he only has to pass the soft half in reconciliation and maybe throw in something else? Or is this all really a kabuki buildup to what everybody expected all along, what the CW expects, which is the infrastructure talks break down, they pass the whole damn thing or try to pass the whole damn thing through reconciliation. And then the big issue becomes what changes do they make to get the 100% of Democrats on board? And that's why I'm so upset that Rubio is not making a big deal of the changes that should be made.
I have a question about getting the Democrats on board. So first of all, do you think Joe Manchin is basically saying, look, I can't vote for something that no Republicans vote for. You got to get the Republicans on board. In which case, what good is Joe Manchin? I mean, then in effect, you might as well have 49 senators, and the Democrats in the Senate. And B...
Well, no, because when it came to reconciliation, he voted with the Democrats. They wouldn't have had the rescue bill.
Well, but I'm hypothesizing that Manchin is basically saying to Biden, I've got to have Republicans on board to have political cover in West Virginia. Maybe he's not, but I'm saying if he is saying that, he's pretty worthless. I mean, it's just conjecture. But the other thing is, can't Biden gain a little bargaining leverage with Manchin by at least flirting with a possibility of buying off a couple of Republicans or
he has leverage for that now with Anwar in Alaska. He is banned drilling in the Arctic Reserve there, and Murkowski makes it a big deal about how she wants to preserve drilling, and now she's in trouble, and Biden can let her off the hook by allowing drilling. So he has Murkowski by the by the short hairs.
There's no way you could have finished that sentence. It would have created an image I actually want to contemplate. But
it was hopeless.
You did your best.
It was the Kuramashi, whatever it is,
right.
of punditry. But so he is in the process of getting leverage over Murkowski. So yes, I think you're right.
Huh. I mean, I was thinking maybe a nice, like, airport for Utah or something, but, okay. I mean, he can play that game.
Romney. I mean, he's a politician. He's good at that.
Yeah, he can buy. Well, why don't we hear more about that? I mean, Manchin is just such an obstacle here.
Because the press is assuming that the Republicans will be in lockstep. I think they're probably wrong.
Yeah, I think they may be. But again, Trump re-enters the picture because it could be that Murkowski fears Trump declaring jihad on her, although I don't know if she got the pipeline opened up, it would be hard for him to complain about that.
There are.
I mean, Mitch McConnell alone cannot put the fear of God in her. I don't think, right?
Are you saying that you think Republicans will break away on the filibuster vote? Because I don't think that'll happen.
No, I'm not talking filibuster.
I think they break away on the reconciliation vote.
Right. But which is all you need for these two bills, right? Family and jobs.
Yeah. It wouldn't bother me if they insisted on all they have to do to please Mickey is insist that the child tax credit checks only go to working families or to people that earn some income. The people who currently get them now should get them. They could be enhanced. It's fine.
The good news for you, Mickey, is that rarely a day goes by where I don't hear a prominent Washington politician say, what do I have to do to please Mickey?
Well, that's the problem. Nobody seems to be thinking that. And like I say, even Rubio, who's supposedly the champion of restricting it to workers, isn't exactly shouting it from the rooftops. They seem to have sort of a passive view, which is, well, gee, we need get some more people on board. Well, show some leadership and get some more people on board. I mean, it's not like it's a losing issue. I don't understand it.
So here's my question about the Trump. Does the blog fail? What does this say about Trump? I mean, it's, you could have done a decent job. I mean, obviously, blogs are retro. They're not the path you would choose if you had access to your Twitter account. But there would have been a creative way of doing it. If you got really savvy social media people, there's lots of things you could have done. I mean, one thing I'm wondering is why doesn't Trump have a proxy Twitter account? Like, why don't they create a blog that is nominally its own 501c3 or something, or some other corporate entity, and it's technically not him, and it has its Twitter account. And then he uses the blog to build up the Twitter account. And by the way, if you've got this many people living in fear of you, prominent politicians, conservative pundits, and so on, you should be able to get them to use their Twitter accounts to give you juice, right? I mean, there were a lot of levers at his disposal, and it just seems to me this reinforces my view that he's really not a very smart guy to begin with. I mean, maybe you wouldn't expect better from a guy in his 70s in terms of how you use new media, but he's not a very smart guy. And also, he doesn't really know a smart guy when he sees one. I mean, every once in a while, he luckily for him, winds up like with a Steve Bannon right when he needs him during the election. And Bannon does know certain things that can be of use to him. But by and large, he's just not a very smart guy. This just seems to me another,
Well, the smart people he found were people who hated his agenda and undermined him. So, like Gary Cohn. So, nobody argues that Gary Cohn is smart. Well,
that's kind of what I mean too. That's maybe a different story. But I had the sense that, once he got into office, he was still being in effect manipulated by these various forces. Because again, he's just not that with it. He's like, he didn't realize that these people that he's filling his foreign policy staff with don't really want to serve his foreign policy agenda. I just don't think he's. I don't know. Well, I mean, how do you read the blog thing?
No, you're completely right about Trump and his personnel choosing skills, but I wonder why that is. Is it just because he's an egomaniac and doesn't want anybody else smart around him because they threaten him? I don't think that.
No, I don't think. I think I don't think he knows smart when he sees it.
That's possible.
Or maybe he doesn't. He doesn't know smarter than him when he sees it, and that would cover a lot of people, if you ask me. Yeah.
He desperately needed a strong Svengali at his side, telling him.
Well, he actually had him in Bannon, but then his ego got in the way because once Bannon started getting attention as the great manipulator, supposedly, Trump's ego couldn't bear that. Plus, Bannon should not have referred to Ivanka as dumb as a brick in retrospect.
Did he do that after they won?
Well, it was in the White House. He said it to. He was quoted as saying it, but he didn't deny it. I mean, he didn't hold a press conference and say it. But I think it was the book by what's the name of the guy who claimed he camped out in front of the Oval Office for months and everybody talked to him.
Not Michael Wolff.
Yeah, I think it was maybe in the Michael Wolff book. But Michael
Wolff facts are not to be taken at 100%. But I believe. If Bannon didn't deny it, he probably said it.
I don't think maybe he did. Maybe he did. But so also the other thing is like, what about the reinstatement thing? Do you think Trump? It's true that as reported, he thinks there's a. Oh yeah. I also want to give you shit about this tweet of yours. This is related. But first, do you think that Trump really thinks like, okay, 1 or 2 recounts and he's in the Oval Office? By August,
I don't know
apparently?
if the question is, has he really bought into it himself, or does he just think this is a nice story that'll keep the base riled up for a few more months? I believe the Maggie Haberman piece implied that he'd really bought into it. He may be so out of it now that he's really done that. The answer is I don't know.
So here's a tweet I want to give you shit about. So you tweeted, I guess you were commenting on a piece by, it was by Charlie Cook, I guess, saying, look, Trump is deluded. There is no basis. There's no legal basis for reinstatement. Doesn't matter what the recounts show. And then you tweet, but is it true that there's no brilliant, creative, insane law professor in the country who can come up with an argument that would allow some kind of installation of the real winner? If it could be proven that voting machines were hacked and elections stolen. I mean, Mickey, like, what are you trying to stir up here?
I'm so happy you fell for that bait, Bob.
Well, that's my question. Are you just trolling or what?
No, it's an interesting question. Charlie, obviously what Trump's doing is insane. I had said that before. I said in the tweet after. It's an interesting legal question. Charlie Cook had a hypothetical. He said, if you could prove that George Soros and Maduro hacked the election and it was completely illegitimate, that's the hypothetical. Okay, it's a legal hypothetical. I'm not saying that's what happened. You could flip it. You could say, if you could prove that, Trump hacked his 2016 election and it's 2017 and he's in power because we know from provable evidence that that he stole the election, is our judicial system really incapable of stopping that wrong result, or do we have to live with it for 4 years? And yes. Charlie Cook's point was, yes, we have to live with it for 4 years. And I'm just, as a legal question, what the fuck does Charlie Cook know? What do I know? I would like to see some more creative legal minds say, do we really have to live with it for 4 years? Or can Larry Tribe come up with some obscure writ of hungadunga that allows the Supreme Court to set things right? I don't know what the answer is. It's a very interesting legal question.
Yeah, but I think the answer
first
is
impression, and I want to toss that out there as just purely an intellectual exercise and hook people like you who don't understand the difference between intellectual exercise and think I'm going to bat for Trump.
Yeah, I do think you were going to bat for Trump.
No, I wasn't.
That's true.
It was an interesting question. I write about things that are interesting. You could flip it. Like I say, you could flip it. You could have what happens if the Republicans steal the election from the Democrats?
You could, but that you can't now because it's no longer 2017. But what would happen is the Supreme Court would, in the end, say exactly what Charlie Cook is saying. Even this fairly conservative Supreme Court ruling on a case involving Trump would say, they would come up with a reason to say, look, once Congress has certified it, you're done, because they realize it just has to be like that. It's as a practical matter, you can't start incentivizing people to be trying to recount votes forever in every election.
That's what we thought in
Gore
Bush versus Gore, where I think the only explanation for that is, as a practical matter, they said we better install Bush now or else all hell's going to break loose.
Right.
Well, it's not a principled decision. Well, now they'll say, as a practical matter, we have to get these thieves out of office or have a new election or something. Well,
I mean, there's also the fact in this case that, as I've said, that Trump's lawyers never even alleged in court that there had been fraud.
This is a hypothetical, Bob.
Right.
You're changing the hypothetical. The hypothetical is it is proven. It's a hypothetical. It's not what happened. Okay?
It's not?
No, we're arguing, and I think you're probably right that the court would do nothing. I just think we can't just say right off the bat, "Oh, this would never happen." And I would like,
the reason
some legal weirdos to come up with to see if there really is no remedy if we have a stolen election. If the mafia takes over America through bribery and changing the voting machines, we have to live with them for 4 years unless we can impeach them.
But see, as a rule, your tweets and utterances in general are very much driven by your political agenda. I mean, what did you start this conversation talking about? Mickey wants a Tea Party. Mickey wants a Tea Party. And you don't sit around pondering the mind-body problem. Your tweets are very politically motivated.
How do you know, Bob?
Well, we've been doing this a year and you haven't brought it up. And which is actually kind of insulting because I'm, with all due humility, I think I have about as much insight as any contemporary thinker into the mind-body problem.
I'm a Bob Wright disciple on the mind-body problem. I think consciousness is a miracle. Is that the Bob Wright party line?
That's one way you could put part of it. I accept your authority. I was just looking for the equivalent legal authority, the Bob Wright of the law, who is not Charlie Cook, to say, it's just an interesting question. It's just pure speculation. Now, what do you think about this Israel thing that's getting so much attention? We may be finally done with Bibi.
I don't know what that means. As you know, it's not my area of expertise.
It means nothing. You can skip it. I mean, on the issue that gets most of the press in America in terms of Israel, I mean, there are lots of issues that Israelis care about that we don't hear much about, and that's one thing. But in terms of Israel-Palestine, which eats up most of the Israel-related news in America, it makes no difference whatsoever. I mean, Bennett is even further right than Bibi, and left to his own devices might immediately annex large chunks of the West Bank. But because he's in this bizarro coalition, he can't get away with that. So
we don't know if it's actually going to happen.
It's not quite a completely done deal. It's like, Bibi just needs to buy off one politician. But they have signed the papers. I mean, the parties have all committed to the coalition. It's a question of whether Bibi can reach in and steal a politician from one of the parties who will abandon the party. Right.
Do you think that? Do you think it's a coincidence that Iran's largest warship sank?
No, this worries me. Well, not only that, but I mean, refineries are blowing up in Iran and stuff. I was wondering if it was Bibi's last-ditch attempt to start a war with Iran, which would probably keep him in office, or do something like that. And I was wondering, in any event, will this, I mean, if you assume that some or all of this is being done by Israel, will it subside once we have new leadership? I don't know the answer, but it's getting a little old, and I wish Biden would read him the fucking riot act if he is the one behind it.
It could be driven by Bibi's desire to remain in office, or it could be driven by Israel's desire to sabotage the Iran deal, which is apparently going swimmingly. Which means it would persist after Bibi leaves.
Well, or persist until the Iran deal is done, which some people think there will be some kind of tentative agreement next week. Others don't. But
I assume they're rushing to do it before these elections. Is that the theory?
Well, the elections, I think the truer deadline. I mean, now that this council in Iran has narrowed the field of candidates to a bunch of conservatives, the main drama. Well, there is not much. I don't know if there's much drama in the election. I mean, I think so the deadline becomes more like the day that this administration would leave office, which is sometime in August.
Okay. So I claim you're going to owe me an apology.
I'll just do it in advance, Mickey. I just want to say that if I've ever done anything that hurts you, I was worried you were going to be cranky like last week, but you've been drinking your turmeric soothing tea also, I guess. It's chamomile. Hey, that's what you should call your new political party. Hey, wait, hear me out. The chamomile party? Yeah, because you want it to be anti-woke, and a tea party. Chamomile is said to be conducive to sleep, right? The chamomile party.
Go back to sleep party.
Anti-woke. That's anti-woke.
I could get Ariana Huffington to delete it. She's a believer in sleep.
Is she ever? There you go.
No, go ahead. Flesh this out. You're on a roll.
What were we talking? No, you were about to demand that I apologize. And I want to say if I have ever damaged your sense of self-worth. Well, it's a self-evidently great idea. You want it to be anti-woke and have some reference to tea so we can keep going with these brew.
Okay.
Insert brew in every other...
That was an accident.
You did it several times. Go back and check the videotape.
It was still an accident. You gave me shit about the lab leak hypothesis. Fine, we've talked about that. You also gave me shit. I didn't
give you shit about that. You owe me an apology.
I
accept. It's fine. No, really, it's nothing. It's fine. I'm over. I'm totally over it. Don't worry. I'm over it.
To the idea.
I'm over it. You don't need to apologize.
Okay. You were hostile to the. I'm certainly not going to apologize to you on that. You were hostile to the idea that China was wildly under announcing the number of deaths in Wuhan, and now there's evidence is emerging that is in fact true. In one of Fauci's emails, there's some professor who says, my friends who wander around Wuhan said body bags are stacked up at every corner, that the Chinese are obviously lying about this. And there's something in The Economist saying that their data, which I couldn't read because it's behind a paywall, shows that the Chinese are lying about this. And it seems possible that China they're making up a number that shows they have control of the virus that bears no relation to reality at all. And if that happens, you are going to have to apologize, or else I'm going to have to go back and dig through hundreds of hours of tape to find the portion where you give me grief about this.
That you are going to have to do. Because I have no recollection. I'm not saying I didn't. I'm just saying I'd like to see you spend your time that way.
I'm thinking about the mind-body problem. I don't have time for that.
One thing about this lab leak thing is, I really think... one way to think of it is if there is a culprit, if there's been a cover-up, it has definitely involved American scientists. I don't mean they've knowingly lied about it, but if you look at the reasons, I've said this before, but if you look at the reasons it was kind of pushed to the margins from the beginning, some prominent American scientists who had a vested interest in not raising questions about gain-of-function research in this particular lab, because they were involved in that, they were influential in pushing this thing to the margins. And I think this is a more globalized thing than people realize. It's Chinese scientists and American scientists, and that's, science is a very international community. And
the thing with Fauci's emails is he knew that they were people were going to get them. They were going to be public under FOIA. You talk to somebody in the White House, they all know that all their emails are FOIAble. It's incredible that they were released this quickly. I mean, Fauci's still there. How can he possibly do his job when things he wrote last year become public within a year? So he's obviously not telling the truth. You have to read between the lines here. He's not going to state, I am trying to squelch this rumor, or that I'm not trying to squelch this rumor. He's going to be very civil and say thank you for your input, and so people were he was open and seemingly receptive to the lab leak hypothesis, but who knows what he was actually doing? Mm-hmm. He seems to be a very political guy. As your emissary to the far right, Bob. At least I read those people.
That's your job, and you do it well.
You know that the pangolins are making a comeback on the far right.
Isn't it pangolin? Didn't we decide you pronounce it
pangolin? Okay, pangolin.
Are they?
No,
wait. No, but I mean, has the far right come all the way around back to pangolins?
No, they've gone beyond that. There's this guy. There's this local right-wing columnist named David Cole Stein who has a very interesting history, but he's been on a roll lately. He's been on fire, and he's pointing up all the things that all the evidence that there is for the pangolin.
Pangolin is
pangolin. Anyway, the zoonotic. I don't even know how to pronounce zoonotic either. The animal theory of the wet markets. They discovered, it in 6% of the samples that they took in the wet market, which is apparently a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all over the damn wet market, and it's not in the places where you would expect if it was transmitted from humans to the wet market. It's from the animal entrails in the sewers of the wet market. So there's that powerful evidence, and there's
right, but it still could have started in the lab, and then. Well, I see what you mean. Okay, the pangolin meat itself. Okay, now you're talking.
Why would China be caught so unawares if it was a lab leak? I mean, my friends who were in India, maybe the China's a horrible regime, but they let 5 million people leave Wuhan and travel around the world spreading this virus before they got it under control. If it was sort of their baby, you would think they would have reacted better.
So wait, is this pangolin evidence solid that there was a lot of it in the? You're saying in
apparently
the
that's solid, yeah. But we don't know how it got there, but that is solid. There's a.
Well, is it this very virus? It's they've sequenced it.
I don't know that.
If it is, it's in a bunch of pangolin flesh.
No, I don't think they've. I think it's just sort of innards of animals. I don't know what surfaces I don't know what they sampled in the wet market, but the wet market idea, they haven't found the intermediary animal yet. That's one of the problems. But they have, this evidence for the wet market. But wait, the right is now moving even further right to the Ron Unz theory, which is basically jives with China, which China no longer pushes the wet market, or they never push the wet market. They think it's from an American military exercise happening
I think
in
they're
Wuhan.
Trolling when they say that, but okay, they've said
it. But
I don't think they've said it officially, have they? Or have they?
But there are people on the right who are buying that, who say that,
cool.
Who claim that, that the evil Fauci somehow got this virus through the CIA and introduced it into China through these exercises. And somehow intending to infect the leaders of Iran. Beats the hell out of me.
Wait, run by that again? Wait, how does that go? I lapsed. I was thinking about Ron Unz. I didn't realize.
I didn't read the whole Ron Unz piece. I didn't have time, so you'd have to look at the Ron Unz piece. But it somehow also involved...
That's UNZ, folks.
It somehow also involved infecting the leaders of Iran, which... intentionally, sort of CIA-wise.
This is so crackpot.
Really,
this is just
right
beyond parody. It's so crazy.
Gone full circle to half agreeing with China.
See, I never thought of Ron Unz as actually crazy before, but I'm getting there.
Well, the stuff about the protocols of the Elders of Zion didn't convince you?
What is he? Is he?
I think. Well, I don't know. He follows. He's an independent thinker. He follows his thought
where
he leads.
Is he not Jewish?
I don't know if he's Jewish. Does it matter? I mean, Jewish people can
matters a little. Most people who buy the elders of the
he doesn't buy the elders. He doesn't buy the elders of the protocols of Zion. But I think
Then what?
I think he wrote a piece. I may be characterizing it wrong. I think he wrote a piece saying, there were elders. There were some elders that drank the blood of Gentiles. There was some evidence for that. So it was a very, very, bannable, cancelable piece, and this is like nothing compared to that.
Yeah,
but I'm sure he's the same run-ons as ever, which he's very, very smart. He goes places no man dares to go.
He started out as
one of these days he's going to come up with something that nobody else has come up with. That's right.
He started out as an anti-English as a second language crusader, right?
He's very pro-immigrant, okay, but he made his name as an pro-immigrant, anti-bilingual activist in California.
That's what I mean.
And he was very successful.
He was anti-ESL curriculum in the public schools, right?
I don't know what English as a secondary language means.
Well, maybe I've got it wrong, but yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
He was anti-bilingual.
Bilingual is a better.
And he succeeded.
He's an assimilationist.
He succeeded for a number of years in formally getting this out of the California public schools, and now that the Democrats have a one-party state, they are reinstating it. And his biggest allies were the Latina parents who wanted their kids to learn English so that they could get ahead. So he performed a valuable public service there. Then he had this plan to he had a very efficient way he devised to get all the contacts from all little magazines and put them up cheaply on the web. And he seems to have run into two problems there. One is the magazines denied permission to him to get into their archives. And the second is Google can do the same thing, if not more efficiently. It doesn't matter. Google has so much money, they can do it anyway.
That's the one time I met him. It was at a lunch with him and Rick Hertzberg, and he was pitching that idea.
Yeah. And then he started the UN's Review, where he publishes various bannable people like Steve Saylor.
He's not a Trumpist?
He's such a Trumpist that he may not be a Trumpist. The answer is I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, what else?
I doubt he is wildly pro-Trump. He's the sort of guy who would not be wildly pro-Trump.
Do you have a view on Naomi Osaka?
I had a take on Naomi Osaka.
Have you forgotten
it? It's a take, which turned out to be what? Let her play tennis. Why should she have to go to a fucking press conference?
No, I think the answer they'd give you is she signed a contract. I think they all signed a contract.
Sue her, but don't keep her out of the tournament. The tournament's supposed to be about playing tennis.
Mickey, they didn't keep her out of the tournament.
Yeah,
they just said they were going to fine her.
And
she dropped out of the tournament in response.
I think they were threatening to ban her.
No, they weren't. Not even close. Are you kidding?
Really? I thought that's what was happening.
No, she's like the big thing in women's tennis. No. All they did is they levied a fine.
Okay, we can check the record, and in the Parrot Room we will know what the truth is. I think
I'm writing down on the Parrot Room list Naomi Osaka. I will quickly say.
But was that your line, or what was your line?
I have a different line. No, my view is it certainly should. Okay, so they've all signed these contracts that they have to do. The press conference. I would say if somebody refuses to sign the contract, they shouldn't be banned from tennis. No organization should have that kind of power. I mean,
but they obviously do have that power.
That's not clear.
The contract, but should the contract exist? No, it should be about tennis, not PR.
Okay, but see, here's what I think happened is she did sign the contract. If you want to put that system to the test, then you have to have somebody saying, I'm not going to sign your contract. I still want to be in your tournament. That hasn't happened. Now, if they said no to her then, I think she'd have a hell of an antitrust suit on her hands.
I don't know what happens if you're a really good tennis player and you just show up and qualify for the tournament, but you don't sign the contract. What happens?
I think the thing is they all start signing the contracts before they're famous and powerful, and so everybody signs the contracts. Yeah. I don't know.
The result is that a tournament that seems to be run more for the bureaucrats that run it and the advertisers, as opposed, and it's based on this premise that it's picking the best tennis players in the world, but it's not really. It's picking the best tennis players who are willing to do all this elaborate PR bullshit.
Yeah, but there's no great tennis players who aren't willing to do that. They all sign the contract and they all show up.
We now know an exception.
Now there is an exception. It's getting interesting. And she's saying, she's a true introvert, and even that, she's had mental health issues. She says she's been depressed. I don't see how somebody could maintain their game at that level and be depressed in the actual clinical sense. I really don't. I mean, you got to get up every day and work like hell to stay at that level, but
we don't. The more plausible explanation was she was practicing positive thinking. In other words, she hasn't done well on clay. She's going to go to this press conference and get a lot of shit from reporters who are going to be negative about her ability on clay, and she's going to doubt herself. One way to do that, to deal with that, is just to wall it all off and only listen to through your headphones to positive thoughts about how great you are. And that's one technique for improving your performance, and that's what she's that's the technique she's wanted to pursue, and this whole depression thing was a cover for that. But I think she should be able to do that. That's sequestering yourself until the day of the match It's a tried and true technique. Why can't she do that?
Well, I don't think she's making up the depression stuff. I just think she's not using the term in the clinical sense. I don't. Depression and anxiety is I think more common. I think among like millennials and Zoomers, the two words are very commonly put together. It's like a super common syndrome that people think of themselves as having.
Right.
Whereas with our generation, I think it was more like one or the other. I don't know. I mean,
depression or anxiety.
Yeah, and more often just anxiety. Anxiety seems to me the curse of our generation. At least if you listen to what people say. Anyway,
speak for yourself.
Do you not suffer from anxiety? Maybe I could help.
I suffer from anxiety, and I'm a slightly depressive person. I always look at the dark side of things.
We'll pursue this
but apparently in Formula One, they have to do even worse than that. Apparently, they're required to participate in like absurd game shows. Somehow, I don't think Lewis Hamilton, a man of great dignity, being dunked in a game show. But if they tell me he does it, that's fine. But in Formula One, they have to somehow figure out a way to finance these incredibly expensive machines they race. Okay. In tennis, you don't have to do that. You have to show up with a racket. Okay, you should be able to just show up with a racket and not have to do your part to to boost the sponsors if you don't want
to. Wait.
Anyway, that's.
Well, but they do want the money. They want the prize money.
They should take away. They should take away her money. Fine.
Well, that's exactly what they did. They fined her. That's what they did. They said, "We want to take away your money." Not that much of it. By her standards, I think it was tens of thousands of dollars.
This gets to the issue of my impression is she said $15,000. That's nothing to me, and she paid it. And they figured that they have to take more drastic action, and they were threatening to exclude her from the tournament.
Well, maybe you're right.
It is nothing to her, $15,000.
But I don't think you are. Anyway, by the time we get to the Parrot Room, we'll have gotten to the bottom of this, and one of us will be eating crow. And I got news for you. It may not be me. One more connection between this story and us, Mickey. Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah.
There was a time when tennis players weren't compelled to show up and do press conferences if they didn't feel like it. You could be, or to take golf, like Ben Hogan. I mean, Ben Hogan, they said he never said anything. They said you could play a whole round of golf with him, and the most complex sentence you'd hear him utter is, "You're away." That's a inside joke for golfers. But there was a time when they didn't have to do this. And Mickey, there was a time in journalism, which you and I recall, when journalists were not expected to promote their work. Remember those days?
Well, I claim that the halcyon days of blogging, which Trump unfortunately missed, were the days when the search engine did all the promotion for you and you didn't have to promote it. Then it was supplanted by the era where you had to get links from more prominent bloggers, and you did have to promote yourself. I mean, Ben Smith thinks this is the heyday of blogging, when he had to write a little suck-uppy notes to people, "Hey, can you link to me? Can you link to me? Can you link to me?" And I claim that that's when blogging went all to hell, because then you did have to promote yourself. There started to be you would write the piece, and instead of just going to sleep, you would have to spend another hour and a half, promoting it, sending it out, doing all sorts of bullshit with hashtags or whatever it was that...
but I think we're conflating variables here. I mean, okay, so you're having to promote your own blog is a function of it being your blog. That's a function of it, you not working for some magazine that has its own PR apparatus, okay? Like if you'd started your own old-fashioned magazine, you'd still have to send shit out and work hard to get attention. That would be life for the individual proprietor. But what's new now with social media is that a magazine's decision to hire you or not will depend partly on how an effective a promoter, how many Twitter followers you have. If you have 1 million, they're much more interested in having you write for them than if you have 10,000. And you are implicitly expected to promote your work. When we were at the New Republic, it was such a great feeling. You would hand in your piece, it would get edited, the issue would come out, time to go get a beer. Or whatever.
No, I distinctly remember Mike Kinsley saying, "Oh, if you wrote a good piece, which happened once in a blue moon," he would say, "Okay, you could spend half a day promoting this."
Wait, what does that even mean? What did promoting it even mean then?
I forget. It's weird. I mean,
Well,
I
I'll
guess
tell you what. I mean, they had a PR person, Marina, whose job was to get you on radio shows,
Right.
and if she did, she would. But this is different. This is like you know. I mean, usually you wouldn't hear from Marina. It would just be you hand the piece in, you're done, goodbye. Now it's like you're supposed to you post the piece and then you got to go to Twitter. I mean, not that I would know. I don't write for.
I guess you send it around. You would write gratuitous op-eds based on it. It's not that you were trying to start controversy, or obviously that was good, but it wasn't like now where you're purposely trying to
you
troll
didn't
people.
Send pieces
There was
around?
something I did for half a day that promoted a print piece.
What with
I
a
think, I know.
fax
We
machine?
had a copy of the piece, and you sent it to influential people. So you'd send your piece to Anthony Lewis.
What,
okay?
by Pony Express? What?
Yes. I think
what by
that
fax?
must have been the way. That must have been the way.
I
it was.
never did that shit. And
You
I
sent
wrote,
a little
and look,
note.
Mickey,
You have a little note saying,
I wrote cover
Tony,
stories.
I thought you might be interested in this, Mickey. Go ahead.
I wrote. Let me finish my self-aggrandizing sentence. I wrote cover stories for Time in the Atlantic. I never had to do that shit. Now they would say, if we book you on a radio thing, will you be there? And you'd usually say, yeah, and it might happen, but it just, this is a different world, and I maintain it's leading to a different kind of journalist. It's a different sensibility.
Oh, of course.
The person who is this 24/7 great self-promoter who's like really got the Twitter algorithm figured out, that's different from a good journalist. They're not the same.
Even if it doesn't do that, I mean, it's a double-edged sword because their Twitter feed is a better source of news than what they write for the newspaper. And B, it's hard to discipline them because they're big enough to tell you to go screw yourself. And C, they eventually get so big that they start their own Substack and make $500,000 a year. So Dean Baquet at the New York Times has had horrible problems reining in the tweeting of his people, and I think he's pretty much failed. I mean, this woman who said we can't believe the lab leak theory, I hope we stop writing about the lab leak theory because it's racist, she's still on the beach. She had an annoying story today. He obviously has not disciplined her for doing that, I don't think. Yeah, but it's not like the newspapers are 100% for this. They're sort of had to accept it as a way to maximize revenue. Right.
Anyway, it's a different world. I don't want to sound like a cranky old person, but you got to give it to me. I'm not as cranky as I was last week.
No, you're.
I'm a breath of fresh air compared to last week.
Positively Pacific.
But you know what? I'll tell you, I think the cranky formula may work. You know, we picked up some Parrot Room
people like
patrons
cranky
last week. Yeah, no, I think like the source of drama of this show would be, ooh, what kind of mood will Bob be in this week? You know,
right.
Will he be throwing shit? Will he be, you know?
You have to crank it up a bit. Take the madness up a level. So I had this. I did this classical Twitter thing, which is I started a crusade before I really knew what I was talking about on Twitter.
No one's ever done that on Twitter before.
Supposedly, Chuck Schumer's big priority is one of the two. One of them's being anti-China. The other is being the sort of George Washington, Johnny Appleseed of the shift to electric cars. And my line, living in California where there are electric cars everywhere and charging stations everywhere, is the shift is happening without Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer wants just to spend billions of federal dollars so he can say, hey, I produced the transition. And, a lot of there are dangers in that. The government can intervene and impose a solution that is suboptimal. The classic example, to my mind, is Obama wanted to shift to electronic health records, which is a good thing, but he promoted this one particular software run by this one particular woman that all the doctors hate. So the result is we've standardized nationally a crappy form of software. Whereas if it was allowed to bubble up organically, they would have figured out what's worked. So I'm right about this, I think, but I thought that the current proliferation of charging stations was unsubsidized. In fact, it has been subsidized by the state government. I still think it's going to happen, even if it's unsubsidized, but there's certainly no need for, I don't think, for federal subsidies. They're going to be making billions of electric cars, and people are going to drive them. They're going to want to have to charge them. the gas station is going to want their business, so they have a charging station where
Fine,
instead
but
of getting gas, you charge up. So that's going to happen.
Yeah, but one thing, now that all the big automakers have their EVs, they all are, you've got a pretty powerful lobby for federal subsidies, and I think Chuck Schumer has never turned a deaf ear to the possibility of corporate supporters.
But that's not honorable. That's just, that's exactly
Chuck
what I'm saying.
Schumer's not honorable?
There are a lot of big industries that want subsidies, so...
I'm just saying, as a political matter, the strength of this argument is going to grow. As a political
not only
matter.
does he get corporate support, but he gets to don the mantle of green leader. So
it's a twofer.
A visionary.
It's a twofer. He can do photo ops with AOC. It's great.
But we don't. It's not the highest and best use of $100 billion of the federal government's money. There are probably other things we could spend it on. The actual charging station part is only like $26 billion or something, $23 billion.
Well, that part is the best argument for government support.
But no, I think the best argument for government support is somehow securing the rare metals that we'll need for batteries and crap like that.
Well, okay, but I mean the best. Well,
but I mean the idea that how much does it cost to put in a gas pump? It costs $150,000 to $200,000 to put in one of these charging stations. It's got to cost at least that much to put in a gas pump, and yet gas stations seem to put in gas pumps all the time using private money because they want to attract the business. I mean,
right. I'm just saying, if you did want to, as a matter of national policy, really scale up the use of EVs, building that infrastructure would seem to me to be a point where you could intervene at relatively low cost in a way that would make it much more appealing. Because I think a lot of people are afraid of getting stranded.
They are, but the automakers, if you're Ford and you're planning to be all electric and selling, millions of electric cars a year, you're going to make sure that network is there. And it's just not that expensive to put it in. It's not like it's not going to happen. I agree there's an externality there. There's a theoretical argument.
That's the point. No, that's exactly the point.
There's a theoretical argument for speeding it up, but there's a great cost of speeding it up, which is federal control by bureaucrats can be bad.
No, but again, just to be clear on the externality and the collective action problem, it is not in Ford's interest to build charging stations that can also be used by Teslas. It's like, and if they are, and if those are the only kind that are being built, it's in every car maker's interest to sit back and let the other car makers pay for the building of them. It's a collective action problem, and that's when government makes sense for government to step in.
There's a similar problem with computer plugs. I mean, yet most of the industry, except for Apple, seems to have set on a standardized form of plug.
No, that's different. That's a standardization.
Well, this is a standardization problem.
But it's also a pay the cost of construction problem. I'm telling you, it is not. I just think.
So we moved on from the standardization problem. I mean, gas stations.
Well, they're related
will find a way
but separate problems. I mean, let's assume the standardization problem has been solved. It still is not in the interest of any, but maybe the most dominant in the market to actually pay for these things. It's in everyone's interest to sit back and wait for everybody else to build them.
Somehow the market usually gets it together. If Ford wants to have a network of chargers that are like a private club, and you have to drive a Ford to get in, they're free to do that. That's what's so bad about that.
That would be a very inefficient outcome if that happened.
Well, but I think eventually the companies will realize it's an inefficient outcome, and why do we have gas stations? We have gas stations because it's an inefficient outcome, and we'll have gas stations that are now charging stations. I just don't see that as... It's not like a huge earth-shaking thing that we have to, eliminate the filibuster in order to get,
I don't recall.
I agree that there's an externality, but I guarantee you, people around here have internalized the externality. I mean, they want electric cars. There's a huge demand for electric cars.
Yeah, but that's cheap. That's like they just want to be cool. This is California. You're in Southern California.
They want And what happens in Southern California, in a year, people in Oklahoma will want to be cool too. Maybe not Oklahoma, but
careful, man. You're talking about your base.
No, I'm talking about the oil patch. So maybe it'll get adopted there.
Also, I was born in Oklahoma, so be careful on those grounds.
It's got a lot to answer for. Anyway, I still think there's a lot of crap in the infrastructure bill, and if we cared about wasting federal money, which maybe we don't anymore, you could make a big deal of it.
Okay, so we've been talking for well over an hour, Mickey. I would like to note that the congressionally mandated federal report on UFOs has been leaked to the New York Times, or some of the findings, and they're not very interesting, at least as summarized by the New York Times.
They basically seem to have said, but they ruled out that it was one of ours. It's not a project. It's not an Area 51
project. This is, maybe this level of getting into the weeds, I should say, for the Parrot Room. I do want to talk about UFOs in the Parrot Room, but actually this paragraph in the Times piece doesn't make sense. It says, this is the second paragraph, so you have to listen carefully to see it not making sense, but it says, the report determines that a vast majority of more than 120 incidents, not all incidents, okay, it says, the report determines that a vast majority of more than 120 incidents over the past 2 decades did not originate from any American military or other advanced U.S. government technology. That determination would appear to eliminate the possibility that Navy pilots who reported seeing unexplained aircraft might have encountered programs the government meant to keep secret. It absolutely doesn't eliminate that possibility. Right. If it, you would have had to say your first sentence would have to be different. Mickey, this is the second paragraph of like a big New York Times piece. Need I spend more time lamenting the state of journalism?
Well, it
doesn't make any sense.
It was obviously leaked to the Times by people who had an interest in having it disprove the UFO theory, and the reporters obligingly, doesn't have to be an explicit quid pro quo, gave it a spin that the people who leaked it to them would like. And yes, they managed to contradict themselves and produce an incoherent paragraph in the process.
Well, the lead paragraph is they found no evidence that aerial phenomena are alien spacecraft. And of course, how would they? But, no, I guess they could. Anyway, I want to talk more about UFO. I've looked into the UFO thing, a little more in the Parrot Room.
The New York Times isn't what it used to be, Bob.
You're telling me. Of course, the other thing is they may have had to worry. You would think somebody gave them this as an exclusive leak, and they didn't have to worry about rushing a half-assed piece out. But this is a pretty half-assed when your second paragraph doesn't make any sense.
Everybody knew it was coming out soon, and everybody was about to get their hands on it. So I think they did. See, I
wondered if there was an agenda behind the leak per se, or this was just somebody doing a favor for a Times reporter in expectation of getting a favor back. But I don't know. Okay, so
the outlet that's really gone all to hell is NPR. They no longer even pretend that they're not the woke network. I listen to them because you should listen to the enemy, but they're.
Oh, that reminds me. I want to talk to you about the Black Panthers.
Wokeism.
I want to talk to you about the Black Panthers in the Parrot Room because there's an NPR podcast called Throughline, and they had one on the Panthers. They also had one on Israel-Palestine, which was more radical than you'd hear on NPR. NPR per se on Israel-Palestine is still kind of careful and both sidesy. Right. But anyway, they did a Black Panthers thing I listened to that I want to talk to you about in the Parrot Room.
Anyway, they had this series on truth and democracy and reporting, with panel discussions, and I listened to the first one just because I had absolutely nothing else to do. I was in a car, and they admitted that after November, not after January 6th, but after November, they decided to switch to frankly say not that Trump is alleging fraud, but Trump is trying to steal a democratic election. And that just seems like untenable to me. It's like covering a murder trial where you say, Mickey Kaus, accused of murder, is trying to get away with murder. He murdered somebody, he's trying to get away with murder. Look, no, the point of the trial is to figure out who's, if he's guilty of murder.
I'm old school here. I just report who's saying what. That reminds me, I also want to talk about the Uyghurs in the Parrot Room because I interviewed this guy who actually knows something about them, and I did a Just the Facts interview, and I think I'm a little clearer on the charge of genocide and what facts are relevant to it. Yeah.
Would the country be hurt if NPR just disappeared? I mean, the argument for it has always been that there are vast swaths of the interior of the country.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in the Parrot Room. I'm adding it to my list.
I don't think it's not good enough for the Parrot Room.
People, okay, I'm scratching it out.
It's
not good enough for the Parrot Room. It's not good enough for this. Wait, you're right. Parrot Room is premium content. You're right. It sucks.
Well, also, it happens to be relevant to what we were talking about now. But okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm just mindful of the time. We're at an hour and 15 minutes here, and we got a lot of taping to do. And Mickey, as you may have noticed, we're not as young as we once were.
It's like the budget deficit. People actually like the more of it, the merrier now. Anyway, okay.
Okay. Oh, but wait. So other things. So anyway, Parrot Room people can get to via patreon.com/Parrot Room, and they can support us, which is a wonderful thing to do. Other things. So I do want to say something about UFOs. I want to talk about, there's a movie that for better or worse, we have both watched now, Idiocracy. We'll talk about that and try to reconstruct the means by which we wound up watching it, which I increasingly don't understand. I want to ask you a little bit about the Philadelphia Sound. Does that mean anything to you?
Sure.
In music. Okay, good. I want to ask you because I want a crisp definition. There was a good Terry Gross thing. So, by the way, did I say that the Uyghurs interview is on my podcast, The Wright Show? If you want to hear the whole thing, it's with a guy named David Brophy. We said we'd talk about Naomi Osaka. We said we'd talk about NPR, but then I scratched it off because you said no. So that's in the Twilight Zone. What else?
Apparently you can be verified.
Twitter verification.
I haven't tried it yet, but I think we have to talk about how we're going to get verified.
Yeah, I would like to do that and take the opportunity to trash Twitter while we're at it. So that's
not going to get you verified.
It's in the Parrot Room. Do you think Jack Dorsey should subscribe? I'll check the email list. If his email address is on the list, I will not talk about it.
He answers your emails, Bob. You're a big deal.
I DM'd him once, and he DM'd me back. He follows me on Twitter, I think. I should check. He's probably unfollowed me. But he did. Anyway, so what, is there anything else you're going to talk about in the Parrot Room, or is this all on me?
I think it's all on you. You have to, if you're really cranky, maybe people will think they got their money's worth.
Maybe I'll talk about Huawei's counterattack.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about J.D. Vance.
Can't get too much.
Perhaps the one person who can put together this Tea Party revolt that I'm talking about. You know
who else we could talk about as a possible Trump successor? Well, George P. Bush. P.
The more you think about it, the more Ron DeSantis is totally in the sweet spot of, if you don't like Trump but you like Trumpism, there's a lot to like about this guy and not a whole lot to dislike.
DeSantis, you mean? DeSantis himself? Okay.
Yeah, Vance is behind him because Vance is barely running for Senate. He hasn't been elected or anything yet. And he may never be elected. But DeSantis is he's totally perfectly positioned as far as I can see.
So in conclusion,
okay,
I would like to beg people to smash the like button on YouTube if they're watching YouTube, and to rate and review The Wright Show, which this is. You just can't do too much of that. Have you ever rated and reviewed The Wright Show, Mickey?
No, I don't know. The rest of The Wright Show may be not very good. I mean,
I just told you we clarified the Uyghur situation. What the hell do you want a podcast to do?
You maybe, for all I know, you're talking to blobbers all day about how horrible.
And this Tuesday, I'm interviewing a Princeton anthropologist I attacked in my newsletter.
Oh, that is going to be good.
Yeah.
That'll be contentious. Battle of the Titans. Cage match.
We'll see. I'm going to tape it Tuesday morning. We'll post it Tuesday.
We'll see if you even show up this week. You'll probably have a black eye or something.
He seems rough on Twitter. I mean, he's got a... Yes. Fashionably long hair.
You should show up with a black eye even if you don't have a black eye.
I leave you in charge of the visual gags, Mickey.
Okay.
So you've got your bird poised. I mean, let's hear it, and then we'll get out of here, okay? I mean...
My bird is locked and loaded.
Yeah, so
See you in the Parrot Room.
that was the parrot, folks. Okay, we'll see you there.